Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Breuer, and I'm an associate marriage and family therapist in downtown San Francisco, and I focus on working with people with bipolar disorder since I have the diagnosis myself. I am currently accepting clients, and I have a website with a variety of resources, and that is bipolarcounselor.com. Please do check it out. The topic for today is based off of a conference that I went to in Columbus, Ohio, on Sandtray therapy, in particular on trauma and complexes and working with these both theoretically and practically in the Sandtray. So I thought I'd share with you some of what I learned, and let's get started. First off, complexes are a Jungian idea that there's something in our brain around which there's emotional energy, and it's also something that we can't quite bring into consciousness. So it's in the unconscious and it's emotionally charged. They can be these clusters of potentially traumatic material that is constellated around an archetypal core. So it could be mother wounding or the good little boy wounding, probably in my case a little bit, and it's probably turning into an old broken record by now, and thankfully I'm making a lot of progress on my own good little boy complex. But I thought I would start off maybe with a little bit more of a description here. And again, these are maps of the territory, not exactly how things are. And one example of a complex is when this personality seems to take over our consciousness. We can see this in instances of road rage, when you're driving along and all of a sudden something just comes over you where you're full of this gut-wrenching, powerful, ready to bust into somebody rage. And it's like, where did this come from? So some potential complex could have got activated in that situation. Also, complexes are a normal element of our psyche. They serve a purpose and they can help us to learn to grow eventually. They are oftentimes created by trauma in childhood, and they hold our trauma. And they're these inner disturbances that arise beneath consciousness. And they unconsciously determine our mental processes. From this, we can see that we are driven by the unconscious, these psychic forces of emotion and image, and we can, you know, lose control of our everyday ego structure personality. One idea here is that the complex is the archetype of dreams and symptoms. This is often something we talk about in depth psychology and psychotherapy, and looking at the complex as a constellation that wants to seek integration and be brought into consciousness. Complexes are actually a way to help us approach the unconscious without being overwhelmed. And it's through complexes that the unconscious approaches us. And furthermore, complexes are created in relationship, and in relationship, that's where they may be triggered. It's also where they can be healed, thus the importance of therapy. Complexes oftentimes grow stronger and more autonomous unless we integrate them and help heal from them. Complexes often determine in an unconscious way how we relate to other people. And when we are captured by this complex, we act in a predictable way over and over again. So those patterns in our relationships where we can't seem to stop falling for the bad guy or the bad girl or whatever it is that we're just like constantly tripping up in some pattern that is out of our awareness. And that is something that you can come to therapy and help bring into awareness, this complex. And you're actually bringing something that has a biological basis in your nervous system and in your brain. And you can look at this as the old axiom that neurons that fire together wire together. So this material, this emotional charge, it's like cut off from who we think we are in a lot of ways, this cluster, and we need to bring that back and integrate that. Carl Jung is someone that first kind of discovered some of this with his famous word association test. And to detail that out, the setup a little bit, he had a list of like, I don't know, let's just say 100 words or something. Maybe 10 out of that list would be emotionally charged, something like mother or abuse or neglect or whatever the words might be. And he would read these off, and a client or patient at that time, person, would respond with the first word that came to mind. And he would calculate out if there was a delay in the reaction, so like, something's going on inside, and you'd also test out their galvanic skin response, which is often made famous in the lie detector test to see if their sweat and their skin conductance increases. So this pointed to something going on in the psyche, and these can be a sign of anxiety and defensiveness, and it's our reactions against the unconscious, our psychic conflicts. He discovered this as a world and network of unconscious material. From this, we see that in order to integrate a complex, we need an ego that is capable of suffering consciously. So it can be painful to bring this stuff into awareness, and we need the ego strength to be able to do that. So therapy can also be a place of building up your sense of ego strength in case you have maybe a little bit of a weaker, more flexible, permeable ego, and so really kind of making that stronger. At the same time, you're wanting to melt the defenses instead of bulldozing them. So you're softening those rigid structures that keep you safe. So you're going to have to build trust and relax and let out some of that repressed material, and stop the process of dissociation and coming back gently and doing this slowly, because these are emotions that are so intense that the brain oftentimes can't process them without help. And in order to get into these very intense feelings, affect, pay particular attention to body sensations, which are the precursor to emotions. Now, when you're working with these complexes and trauma, you want to make sure that the client has control and that it's a gradual process. And one of the sayings in trauma work is often the slower you go, the quicker you get there. So part of the reason all of this works, bringing this into consciousness, linking up one neural network to another, has to do with neuroplasticity and neurogenesis and the increase of brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So to go over those just a little bit, neuroplasticity is the ability of our neural networks to change and rewire. Neurogenesis is the creation of new neurons, which originally was thought to only happen developmentally, but it is found to also happen in adults. And just to kind of go over this again, an ego is unable to assimilate or integrate the complex, then it splits it off and it becomes autonomous. If unintegrated, these exist as frozen traumatic memory images loaded with raw emotion, and they have a powerful psychic energy. When triggered, it's like being seized by an inner demon. They take over our unconsciousness. And relationships are the most integrative force we have. We are wounded in relationship and we are healed in relationship. And the Sandtray is oftentimes built to be a safe liminal space, and we can reconnect with ourselves and with other people and these cut off material in that place, in that space. And in a lot of ways, the therapist is mediating the archetypal core, the archetype, and humanizing it, and helping make it less raw and soften it with kindness and warmth, because direct unmediated exposure to the unconscious can be traumatic. So therapists are often people that have done their own inner work and have become comfortable and familiar with working with the unconscious, and that is one way that depth psychotherapists can help clients. For this last part here, I wanted to give you an exercise about exploring one of your own complexes. So first off, look for a relational pattern. Identify an intense, repeated experience that you have in a relationship, describe it, and how does it become constellated? So again, look for a relational pattern. Now, what is your internal image of it? Make it pictorial, maybe you'll illustrate it. What image comes to mind regarding this relational pattern? Next, what are the emotions around it? What feelings take over? What affect takes over? And how does this manifest in your body? What sensations occur? Furthermore, what childhood memories are evoked or seem to be related? Again, digging deeper into those associations. And how might this behavior and these feelings affect you in your everyday life? Now, if you really want to work with this, one way is to use some art therapy techniques. So instead of just sketching it, maybe even color it in, act it out, which kind of be more drama therapy, but to treat this image, this complex, as if it were real, because in a large sense it is. And the more real you treat it and work with it, the more conscious it becomes, the more integrated it becomes, and the less power it has taking over your ego in your life. So hopefully some of these ideas in this kind of quick-paced way can help expose you to some new ways of thinking and something to ask your therapist about and something I would love to talk to you more about. So thank you everyone for your attention and stay tuned until our next video.